Now going to move to Finance and Budget with Mrs. Sebo to discuss the appropriations for 2025.
Thank you, President. Tanner, are you ready to take a charge?
Sure. Well, Council, again, I just want to thank you for what I think was a very collaborative process as we move toward a different approach to budgeting and appropriations. I did send out some final figures. The anticipated general fund revenues coming from Treasurer Stuller's office for 25 is 20.5 million. As we collect in this fiscal year, just north of 19.5 million in the general fund. General fund appropriations for 25, and again, you have access to that running totals sheet. But general fund appropriations for fiscal year 25 are a total of $15,668,106.96. The general fund carryover right now is sitting around $982,000 or $982,870.65. Right now, there's not enough data to give you a more accurate figure. This is what we know so far. It is larger than that, so we're working with the auditor's office to keep closing out some POs and closing out those months, and we'll have a better figure as we get further. But again, that's more of an administrative opportunity to keep working with that. Non-general fund appropriations, $50,851,061.50. So to clarify on that, this includes ARPA dollars, grants, and bond payments. So on the bond payments, Mr. Mayville's been working on, so the appropriations cover what we need to pay, but we are still working on some clarity of all the bonds, what the principal is, the total bill that we need to pay each year. So getting that full picture, we're still working on that, but we should be able to know that. And I think the plan is to get that report to you guys within Q1. That way, next year we can more adequately, either if there are some bond retirements this year, or be able to get that report to you. So when we come back with appropriations next year, we have a more accurate figure, or as we move into more major capital projects, we have a better idea of what our bond capacity is. On top of that, again, there's those ARPA dollars, grants that we've appropriated for, as well as we had the conversation, particularly with Mrs. Woods, about the pensions, where we know that we're over appropriating for pensions, so we're going to have to figure out how we want to move forward with that. And we'll figure that out this year. And I'd say, well, I know next year we'll definitely be appropriating at a far lower dollar figure, assuming that the General Assembly doesn't saddle us with the entirety of the bill. So fingers crossed. All right. So we'll rectify how we pay that out. But right now, again, it's just shy of 51 million in non-general fund appropriations.
So you're talking like tonight, we're talking about $71 million total between general fund and non-general fund.
Yeah, for about 65.
20 and 51 is.
Well, it's not 20. So the
15. Oh, you're talking about the 15.6.
Yeah, it's 15.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's about what, 60, about 66.
66 million.
Yeah, just north of 66. And then consider so we've got the general fund carryover, and then finally that non-general fund carryover is about $11,858,929.57. So this does not include, this was a question Mrs. Woods asked, this does not include the reserve balance account. So remember that with that legislation, we set aside that from cash reserves and other underperforming investments. So that's something that Mr. Mayville and Mr. Stuller will look at. We did give them, about a 6 or 7 month grace period to do that, just for working time. That I don't know that they'll need all of that time, but that was just more of a grace period. So this You know, just under 12 million does not include the 3 million reserve balance account or the rainy day fund, but it does include just over about 5 million in TIF dollars, as well as almost 2 million in unexpended ARPA dollars. So, Mr. Severns asked some clarity on the ARPA dollars. So those have to be obligated by the end of '24, but they have to be expended or, you know, spent by the end of '26. So we're going to keep seeing those appropriated until they ride out by '26. So, any questions on that?
I think that this was presented very well, and I think that a lot of the questions that I had were answered. Everybody knows I kind of went toe-to-toe with Tanner last year on the budget.
An amendment to the
Toe-to-toe,
amendment? Yeah. You went
face to face,
toe-to-toe with
who
the Robert's
knows?
rules, ma'am. Yeah.
But I feel very comfortable with what this budget is for this year, and I'm really happy that we have it done before the end of the year. And I look forward to next year having a repeat of this. I think it's a much better system, and it's a good way moving forward.
I want to point back to the budget narrative. You know, we laid out, I think, what I think is a better and more transparent, especially with regards to capital improvement projects, a longer process and a more transparent and involved process for the community. So we'll work with the engineering department, we'll work with Public Works and Public Utilities to get those lists together early. That way we can have meetings both in here, and if it's a project, say, I don't know, in the north end, we can have that conversation somewhere in the north end and invite like the community and the representatives of the north end to be at that meeting and talk about, you know, the necessity for those projects, and just, you know, make sure that the taxpayers know that their tax dollars are going toward projects in their community, and get that public feedback. And that's why, you know, you buy that public buy-in that way. So folks know that what their appropriations are about, what the budget's about, and it can really be a process of their government working for them.
Questions?
So just so I understand, so you're thinking we'll have, I'm just gonna round up, $1 million carry over at the end of this year, is where you're thinking.
Just north of that, yeah. In general fund dollars.
So you said 982, 870, did I not, is that,
That's what I can calculate
Okay.
right now, yeah.
but you think there'll be a little more?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at $20.5 million in revenue, and we're just gonna say 15.5-ish in appropriations, you think we'll have a $5 million carryover at the end of next year? I mean, as it sits right now.
Sure. No, so what's not reflected is some of that, that general fund appropriation that you see in the non-general fund appropriation is the, 3.7 that is included in the capital budget. So that's split. So the 101 is the general fund, and then some of that 19 plus, so a total of about 19.7 million is appropriated. So general fund dollars, if you look at the 101,
Yeah,
that is 15.6.
right,
And the total of the non-general fund is 50.8, but that includes that 401 and 405, which are the capital budget.
but you thought we'd have $20.5 million in revenue for general fund.
That's what's projected in '25,
Okay.
yeah. So to be fair, no, I do not think there will be a $5 million carryover. But we've appropriated those dollars, and a big
Okay.
portion of, I think, what would on paper look like the discrepancy is in the 401 and 405, there's about a 3.7, if I'm remembering correctly, a $3.7 million appropriation for those capital projects.
Okay,
Yeah. So, and I don't think it's fair to say that that's budgeted in the 101 general fund, because it's not. It's 401,
Okay.
405.
and my last question, what's more of a comment, is this. I mean, I think it's fair to say there were some general fund dollars this year spent on expenses towards proposed building projects.
Yes.
And there is some appropriations for 2025 in the general fund towards those building projects. And I've asked this question a half a dozen times, how are we gonna pay for those buildings? So we're continuing to spend general fund monies on some of those expenses. I'm still curious what the plan is to pay for those.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be answered right now. I'm still curious that's.
I-
That didn't sound
Somebody's
good.
very excited. Yeah. While I would never want to put a figure on it because, again, we don't know where, when, who, what, why, and how. We do know the why. It's, as Mr. Ball has said, a market basket of opportunities to pay for a lot of these buildings. So will we, will Mr. Mayville whip out the old checkbook and just take care of it? I wish, but it won't be that simple, but yeah. And I would direct folks, we posted today and I've sent that version over to you. It's more of a conversation draft piece as we go out to the listening tour, as we've proposed options when it comes to those major capital improvements. And I'd like to kind of separate from capital improvement projects to the major capital improvement projects, because to compare, a Memorial Park renovation to building a $20 million police, and that's even a rough estimate. I'd base that on nothing other than other police departments in comparable size. But to compare those two in the same sentence is not fair. But as we start looking at those things, we get a better idea, and we have put out that proposal for folks to kind of look at and say, all right, the city has proposed these 3 buildings at these locations. We've also heard a lot of feedback and have considered, the amount of debt that the city could potentially have to take on with not only these projects, but a wastewater improvement project, repairs to the dike/levee, and all these other things. So we're looking at other options as well. And then there's a third option that's just, public involvement that says, is there something that we haven't considered? So come to the listening tour. It's 9 meetings across 3 months. So we've broken it down to where we're not trying to cram all the conversation into one meeting. We're going to release in January, we're going to release a public, an online survey if you can't make any of those things. But even with the listening tour, we tried to break it up in locations and times and different things like that to kind of, accommodate folks. So we want to hear you. We want to make sure that, if you don't like what we're proposing, let's hear it out. So, yep. What do you think, Janice? How'd I do?
Doing good.
All right. Solid B+. Story
Any
of my
other
life.
questions?
I don't have a question, but I will make the comment that I really did appreciate having access to the Excel spreadsheet that entire time. Just having that at our fingertips was very helpful in sorting this out. And I would love to see that continue. So that was fantastic.
Okay, we're gonna adjourn the Finance and Budget Committee. We're now in recess until 7:30 PM. When we begin the legislative portion of the meeting. And so for right now, people speaking on matters of city concern, I have Joel Mazza, Vicky Fitzgerald, and Vicky Adams. Anybody else wants to speak, let the clerk know. Now 7:30 PM. I'm going to call the City Council meeting for December 23rd, 2024 to order. Mr. Hill, please call the roll.
Mr. Miller. Mrs. Seaval.
Here.
Mr. Severns.
Here.
Mr. Mahan.
Here.
Mrs. Woods.
Here.
Mr. Ruckman.
Here.
Ms. Keener.
Here.
We are in session. An invocation this evening was given by the Reverend Doug Pummel from the Mulberry Street Global Methodist Church. And just also want to point out, he was sworn in as a with the police department as a chaplain this week. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate you being willing to serve as a police chaplain. Please rise for invocation, remain standing for the pledge.
Let us pray together. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for these people who serve your people, O Lord, serve your community. We ask tonight, O Lord, that they hear your calling for ideas that will help serve the people of this community. We ask they listen to you, O Lord. We ask that they listen to each other. And always, of course, think of what's in the best interest of our community. We thank you for this time, O Lord, as we celebrate this week something special, a Christmas. And we pray for those, O Lord, who do not know your grace, and that they come to know it this season. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council, on your packets were the minutes for the legislative session and for the special meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Now I'd ask for a motion for approval.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and second, they be approved. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. They are approved. Mr. Hill, any petitions or communications?
There are none.
Council, in your packets are the committee reports from 2 committee meetings for year review. I see no liquor control licenses or proclamations. We do have 3 people who want to speak on matters of city concern. I'd ask that them come to the podium and state their name and address, and you have limit your comments to 4 minutes. If you need an extension after the 4, you could ask council for another 4. I'll start with Joe Massa.
Good evening. Joel Mazza, 579 High Street, Worthington, Ohio, 43085. I'd like to thank you for letting me come out here tonight. As you know, we finished up the project, the grad, and we've had a very successful year. We went completely leased within 42 days. And we've got a beautiful community up there, and we're pretty excited. But we're in dire need of some sidewalk repair along Burgess Street, curbs, and along Hamtramck Street and Sandusky Street. The brick streets along those areas are in just absolutely terrible condition. In addition, the infrastructure, the sewer lines and the water lines along those areas are also in, well, they're original. Most of them are original, and they're clay. We currently have a waiting list for Phase 2. We'd like to get started on Phase 2 for the units in the back. But when we started this project, it was explained to us that there were grants out there that the city would be trying to get to help for some of the infrastructure and for the brick renovation. And it's my understanding that we have a grant that's approximately $500,000, which would go a long way. This area was blighted. It's in an opportunity zone, as we all know, And this entire city block sat vacant before we took over almost 26 years. And I really think that the community deserves every nickel that we can put in this area to bring this area up to par. And I'm hoping that you will take that into consideration and really look at the brick streets, the curbs, and the sidewalks in that area, and the street lighting. So, and then I would also like to thank you, especially you, Tanner, for helping us redirect the traffic pattern along Hamtramck Street. That is done, and along Burgess Street. It has really helped out getting in and out for our tenants, the front parking lot, and it's increased the flow and the visibility of the building and the community. So I really appreciate that. So, but that's it.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you very much.
Questions? Thank you very much. Next, we have Vicki Fitzgerald.
Vicki Fitzgerald, 206 East High Street, Mount Vernon, Ohio. What differentiates a town from another town? What does Mount Vernon have that makes the town unique or that would make someone want to visit or move here? Is it to experience the anticipation of a natural disaster flooding event that could occur due to our decertified levee? Is it to experience the bumper-to-bumper traffic on Coshocton Road or the joy of having to snake through residential areas to get across town because our city officials have failed to create a rational bypass around the city for the past 80-plus years? Could it be that people enjoy strolling past college buildings and empty storefronts in our downtown area so that they can find the few retail businesses that are like standalone islands on each block? Or maybe they enjoy the thrill of paying their KCH bill or driving by the multiple parking lots that are empty but they can't use until after 5 p.m. It certainly might be to see the stark views they get when coming into town from the east, west, and north that have the appearance of an exit off an interstate highway with sprawling fast food chains and large areas devoid of any character. But all that seriousness aside, towns designate small historic districts to preserve the historic and architectural significance of that area, preserving a tangible link to the past and preserving the character of the town, which foster a sense of belonging and community pride. People who once lived here revisit to see those once beloved landmarks, and people who decide to move and live here come for the unique architecture that still exists and to experience the feeling of old small-town America. The city has decided that an entire city block must be razed in order to build a new courthouse because the newer 1970s building that houses the municipal court and police station is dangerous and unsafe. City officials have clearly shown the building problems and have talked about the costs they have incurred maintaining that building, so the public is well aware of why it needs to be replaced. That building has never fit the city and has been complained about by local citizens almost since the day it was constructed. Yet, in the same breath, they want to save the poorly constructed parking garage portion of the building, which has too low of ceilings for many vehicles to use and has had to be shored up in the past few years. Why has the city not asked an engineering firm to create a rendition of what could be built? For example, a courthouse possibly 3 stories high with a basement and a separate parking lot area from the footprint that would be left if both the water department buildings and the entire current municipal building were both torn down. And since the police department will no longer be housed there, any space created by the additional stories could be utilized for purposes that are slated for the City Hall Annex. If the city believes the historic buildings they want to demolish are too far gone to save or are unsafe, Why have they not had experts in restoration and mitigation go through the buildings, as they obviously have done for the municipal building? Certainly, no one within City Hall carries the distinction of having those credentialing, or am I wrong? It is imperative at this point to ask, since the downtown and public square are part of the designated downtown historic district, has the city not followed the historic district rules and taken their plans to demolish the historic buildings to the Historic Review Committee, which is what any other homeowner in one of the designated historic
Mrs. Fitzgerald, your
districts?
4 minutes are up. Would you like to ask council for another 4?
Could I please have an additional
Is
couple
there
minutes,
any
please?
opposition to her having 4 more minutes? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and take their plans to demolish the historic buildings to the Historic Review Committee, which is what any other homeowner in one of the designated historic districts would have to do. Any review should be an open meeting for the public to provide input, just like any other open review to discuss changes a homeowner wants to make to their structure. Even the Knox County Courthouse plans in 2021 had to be approved by the Historic Review Committee. And in response to Mr. Salyer's comment, but this is our city too. We can pay homage to the people of the past and the things of the past and our history and our heritage, but it's our turn. It appears you are not considering that our means everyone in the community, not just those small numbers of people who will benefit from new office spaces. Need I remind city officials that the electorate was pretty clear in the last election when they took it upon themselves to create referendums for the ballot against the city plans and soundly defeated both by approximately 65% of those who voted. You have lost the confidence of your constituents when the plans you have created are soundly defeated by that margin. I will leave you with a quote from Jackie Kennedy Onassis. Is it not cruel to let our city die by degrees, stripped of all her proud monuments, until there will be nothing left of all her history and beauty to inspire our children? If they are not inspired by the past of our city, where will they find the strength to fight for her future?
Thank you.
Thank you. If anybody wants copies, since I talked fast.
Well, thank you. Next is Vicki Adams.
Hi, I'm Vicki Adams, 1105 Martinsburg Road, Mount Vernon, Ohio, 43050. First of all, I want to applaud Mr. Miller and his desire to provide transparency and to inform citizens of Mount Vernon as to the meetings and desires of the administration that go back 2+ years. I wish to make it known that I do not agree with the demolition of the northeast quadrant of the square, and I am not alone with this opinion. I have heard from friends out of town and out of state who grew up here, have heard and read the plans, and are outraged with the thought of what you want to do. The building I wish to talk about tonight is the Henry B. Curtis that is right next door, listed as 10 and 16 North Main. It is white and has his initials over the second floor windows. Let me inform you of the need to keep this historic building. According to the Mount Vernon Historic Walking Tour, he is called the one person who had the greatest influence on shaping Mount Vernon. He came here with 25 cents in his pocket to study law with his older brother. Partially quoting from the plaque on the square, during his years here, he aided in untangling the legal affairs of one bank and helped start another. He helped bring a railroad to Mount Vernon. He helped Kenyon acquire land in Gambier, and he built houses, office buildings, a hotel, and a grand mansion known as Round Hill. And mostly quoted from the knoxcountypark.org, Henry B. Curtis perhaps was the individual who had the greatest role in developing and shaping Mount Vernon in Knox County. Henry had a desire to succeed in all his business endeavors, and he did just that. He was a lawyer, banker, churchman, city developer, and civic leader. He had ties to the railroad and was instrumental in the completion of the Sandusky, Mansfield, and Newark Railroad. On January 6, 1851, he stood in the snow to see the first train travel through Mount Vernon. He later served as director of the Lake Erie Division of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. He also built the Curtis Hotel in 1876, now known as the Grand. Among his friends was Bishop Philandro Chase, who came to the area seeking a suitable location for a proposed institution, later named Kenyon College. Together they rode on horseback all over the hills east of town, and with Henry's influence, the bishop was able to purchase the needed 8,000 acres. Henry Curtis built and resided in Round Hill Mansion, which is located at the corner of Lamartine and Mackenzie Street in Mount Vernon. The mansion itself is said to have a secret underground passageway that connects it to the family vault of Henry B. Curtis, the builder of the mansion. He was an abolitionist who used the vault to conceal slaves among the Underground Railroad. The family's crypt is located in nearby Mound View Cemetery. By the time Civil War engulfed the nation, milk revenue was an important part of the railroad's incoming in many areas. In the 1880s, refrigerated rail cars were introduced, and in 1881, the Ontario and Western Railroad conducted a successful trial of transporting a carload of milk for 195 miles. With this discovery, the transport of milk flourished on the rail lines. Today, we celebrate the rail line as part of the 365-mile multi-use trail called the Ohio to Erie, which spans from Cincinnati to Cleveland. Knox County is proud to be a part of this trail system, which includes our Heart of Ohio Trail, Cocozan Gap Trail, and Mohican Valley Trail. Today, we argue the destruction of the last Henry Curtis building in downtown. We should be embracing this structure, not destroying it. No matter how bad condition-wise, it can be saved.
Thank you very much. And that concludes the people speaking on matters of city concern. We now move to the legislative portion of the meeting. Council, in your packet is the agenda for this, and this afternoon, there was one addition to one of the resolutions specifying a dollar amount. But other than that, it's the same as what you received last week. So are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? If not, I'll assume it's approved by consensus. And we have one resolution for third reading. That's resolution number 2024-130. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2024-130, a resolution to make appropriations for current expenses for the City of Mount Vernon, State of Ohio, during fiscal year ending December 31, 2025.
Mrs. Seawold.
Thank you. I move to adopt resolution number 2024-130.
Second?
Been moved and second for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Seawold.
Thank you. We had another meeting tonight, and is there anything you would like to add, Mr. Salyers?
No, ma'am.
Anybody have any further questions about the
So the general public knows that the general fund is about $15.668 million, and the non-general fund is a little shy of $51 million. Just so they have a grasp of how much we're talking about. This is probably the most important thing that a council does, is go through the budget and I'm sorry, not the appropriations, and give the administration guidelines by which to spend. Any other comments?
I would just add, expected revenue is 20.5 million for that 15.6.
Right. Mr. Hill.
Mr. Miller, Mrs. Seabolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severns,
Yes.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted. We have no resolutions for second reading. We have four for first reading. The first one is resolution number 2024-134. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2024-134, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director of the City of Mount Vernon to grant easements to Ohio Power Company, doing business as American Electric Power, and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Keener.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the rule requiring 3 separate readings and take Resolution 2024-134 to its third and final reading.
Second?
And moved and second for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Miller, Mrs. Seabolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severns,
Yes.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The rule is suspended. Mrs. Skinner?
I move to adopt Resolution 2024-134.
Second?
Been moved and seconded for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Skinner?
Thank you, Mr. President. We have been talking about this resolution coming for a while now, I think the last 3 meetings. The law director has mentioned that this would be on its way. Sam, would you like to come and just give us a brief rundown? I mean, we've heard about the fact that MVNU is going to be utilizing this property, and with the program that they intend to have here, it's clear to me why they would need additional power. But you've been working with it more closely, so.
Yeah, and we thank you so much for having me. Sam Filkins with the Area Development Foundation, and I'm the Vice President of the Knox County Land Bank. We own 18 East Vine Street, the former Mount Vernon News Building. Construction's going well, but the amount of power that the building needs cannot be served off of Blackberry Alley, so we have to bring power from Spice Alley as well to supplement. In order to do that, we will have 2 easements. One is an overhead easement across the parking lot that you own on Gay Street, from a pole that will be placed at Spice Alley and a pole that will be placed on along Gay Street, so overhead there. And then we will need to, AEP does not run lines over the street, so we will have to bore under Gay Street. So there's a second easement that allows us to take conduit from that pole along Gay Street to the lowest part of the parking lot, because to bore from the highest part would be not wise. We'd end up in the air. So it moves it a little bit north to where that ramp is to get into the parking lot, and then we would bore under to Gay Street. It'll be a 1,200 amp service, if you're curious.
Any questions?
I do have a slight change, and I'm not sure if it's for this one or for the next one, but the one for that portion that goes north will actually need to be in the name of the land bank, because AEP is responsible for the wire while it's on the pole. We are responsible for the wire once it's in the ground. So
That is this one, and everybody has gotten this in their email. It came through this afternoon.
I have printed copies for everybody.
And he does.
So it's the only, you'll see on the red line here, I apologize for the microphone, it's just the name change.
Thank you.
So, Mrs. Skinner, are you proposing an amendment to this resolution?
So, yeah, we will have to enter this as an amendment. Mr. Hill, do you have this red line?
Yes, this is amendments to the exhibit. This is not amendments to
Right.
the actual.
So, do I amend the exhibit? Where's Rob?
You're not amending the exhibit, you'd just be amending the legislation, so.
To accept the newer exhibit?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess
You
now
could
that it's
pass
on the floor, I have to amend it.
Yes.
Thank you, Brian. I make a motion to amend the exhibit that's been entered.
Second?
Been moved and seconded that this resolution be amended for this easement of right-of-way. Any other discussion? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Miller, Mrs. Seabolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
This resolution is amended. We're back now to the resolution as amended.
So I move to adopt Resolution 2024-134 as amended.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that this resolution as amended be adopted. Any other discussion?
I think we've covered everything.
Mr. Hill?
Mr. Miller, Mrs. Seabolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
Resolution as amended is adopted. Next is resolution number 2024-135. Mr. Hill?
Resolution number 2024-135, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director of the City of Mount Vernon to grant an easement to Ohio Power Company doing business as American Electric Power and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Keener?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the rule requiring 3 separate readings and take Resolution 2024-135 to its third and final reading.
Second?
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Miller, Mrs. Seabolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severns,
Yes.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The roll is suspended. Mrs. Skinner?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt Resolution 2024-136. 36.
Second?
Been moved and seconded that this resolution be adopted. Any-
Oh, I'm sorry, it's
It was
written
135.
135, sorry. 135.
Second?
Any discussion? Mrs. Keener?
This is just a sister resolution to the last one, and it's about the easements as well.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Miller, Mrs. Seabolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severns,
Yes.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted. Next resolution is resolution number 2024-136. Mr. Hill?
Resolution number 2024-136, a resolution authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to prepare and submit an application to participate in federal community project funding for fiscal year 2026 for municipal building construction and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Severns?
Thank you, Mr. President. We will give this a first reading tonight.
This resolution receives its first reading. The final resolution for this evening is resolution number 2024-137. Mr. Hill?
Resolution number 2024-137, a resolution authorizing and directing the auditor of the City of Mount Vernon to transfer certain funds.
Mrs. Seabolt?
Thank you. I would like to suspend the rules that require 3 separate readings and take resolution number 2024-137 to its third and final reading.
Second?
Then moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Miller, Mrs. Seabolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severns,
Yes.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
Roll is suspended. Mrs. Seabolt?
Thank you. I move to adopt resolution number 2024-137.
Second?
Then moved and seconded for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Seabolt?
Thank you. Well, he's on his way up there to talk about $10,000.
So this is just another mad dash to transfer some funds to get some bills paid from account maintenance and repair in the Parks Department to account in network systems miscellaneous. The amount is $10,000. We printed it up and forgot to put the $10,000 on there, so.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Miller, Mrs. Seabolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severns,
Yes.
Mr. Mahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Ruckman,
Yes.
Ms. Keener.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted, and that concludes the legislative portion of the meeting. We move now to remarks and administration. Mayor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. President and Council. Council, I gave you sent you the packet, so I have no updates from that. Just want to wish you all Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah.
Mr. Salyers.
Thank you for your work on the Budget Council. Appreciate that. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.
Mr. Mayville.
I would like to thank the administration with all the work, especially Mr. Salyers, on what he did with the budget. I think it was really, he came in the clutch and got her done, and we're gonna have a learning year, and things will be better going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Stoller.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Mr. Barnes not here. We'll move to council. Mr. Severns.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy New Year that'll be coming before we meet again. But I also want to second what Paul just said, and thank you to you and to Mr. Stoller for working with Tanner to really organize this and be transparent and to make it clear. Not just transparent, but to make it clear. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Mr. Mahan.
I just want to thank the city, people who were involved in, as we drive up South Main Street tonight, it was just beautiful, the lights and the square, just all that is downtown, and very much appreciate the folks involved in that work. want to echo the sentiments of the other council members for the good work, and I appreciate council being willing to meet and have extra meetings, and you know, I don't think, clearly we hustled to make it a deadline, but we didn't rush. At least it, you know, doesn't feel that way to me. There was time and effort and questions and answers. It was a good process, and we got it done, and it's only December 23rd, so appreciate everyone's work on that.
And I'm gonna miss that meeting next Monday. We were canceling because we got things done ahead
That's
of
right,
time,
we're
so.
canceling that, baby.
I was coming.
Mrs. Sebo.
Thank you. I want to also wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and to everybody in Mount Vernon, Merry Christmas. And thank you for the work that everybody did to get this done. Now we won't have our Saturday morning meeting with our great breakfast, but I guess we'll survive. And I won't see everybody until next year. So take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Woods.
Oh, I'll just kind of say ditto to what everybody said. Please, everybody out there, just, you know, enjoy some times with those you love and friends and family. And I've got 7 of them waiting at my house. I can only imagine what's going on back home, so please enjoy it. Thank you.
Home's still there.
Oh, my gosh, yes, yeah.
Mr. Ruckman.
Just wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Mrs. Keener.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, Merry Christmas to everybody. Administration did a wonderful job working through the budget. Tanner, it was very annoying you going line by line, but I don't think we would know as much if you hadn't been quite so irritating. So I always appreciate that. I do also want to thank Experience Mount Vernon for making Christmas magical in Mount Vernon and all that they have done for downtown. It's been great to shop down there for Shop Small Saturday. My kids love it. And even today I saw that there was an announcement that a new business would be opening on Main Street. So it's always very exciting downtown, and I just want to thank them for all the work that they did this year. That's all. Thank you, Mr. President.
That's some exciting news. It's not really the city, it's more county or the Knox County Parks Board. But for 25 years, we've been working on getting the woods out, Mount Vernon Developmental Center, turned over to the Knox County Parks. Taken 25 years. We've gone through a lot of different legislators who've come and gone since then. Right now, it's sitting on the governor's desk to be signed. And so, yeah, that's a great woods out there, and extremely mature woods, and that'll be a real addition to this county, and I appreciate that. Only took 25 years, but yeah, doesn't always move fast with government, so we're very pleased that that's happening, and hopefully the governor's going to sign that. But what they call this time of year is Christmas tree bills, and all the legislators want to get something in before the final session because their term is up, and all these things are added, and this is probably added to the Christmas tree bill, but that's okay. It's passed and on his desk. I'd like to thank the media for being here this evening. Thank you, Cheryl. That being said, I call for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
And moved and second, we adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned.
Well, you weren't too far off.